I canceled something my mother never believed I had the power to stop. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't send a long message. I didn't even answer the last text she sent before midnight. At exactly 1:12 a.m., I opened my laptop, typed 6 words into a secure client portal, confirmed my identity, and watched a single notification appear across the screen. Request accepted. Processing started. That was it. No dramatic music. No argument. No revenge speech. Just a quiet confirmation that would completely change what happened the next morning. My phone kept vibrating beside me. My older brother called 3 times. My aunt left 2 voicemails. Even my cousin, who hadn't spoken to me in almost a year, suddenly wanted to know why everyone was panicking. I let every call go unanswered. For the first time in years, silence felt stronger than explanation. The strange part wasn't what I canceled. The strange part was that my mother had unknowingly handed me the reason only 9 hours earlier. She believed removing me from one family group chat meant removing me from the family itself. She was wrong. Because families aren't built with group messages. They're built on foundations. And foundations don't disappear just because someone paints over the front door. Before I tell you what happened at 1:12 a.m., you need to understand how a single message saying, "Don't come back," became the most expensive sentence my mother had ever written. Welcome back to Real Drama Story, where family secrets unfold and quiet decisions change everything. If you're new here, drop a comment and subscribe. Now, let's get into it. My name is Emily. I'm 34 years old, and for most of my life, I believed being the reliable daughter would eventually earn me a place where I belonged. It sounds naive now, but children measure love differently than adults. When I was 9, I thought love meant my mother remembering which bedtime story I liked best. At 16, I thought it meant waiting for me after school when I had a terrible day. At 25, I convinced myself love simply looked different in our family. Looking back, I realize I kept changing the definition because the original one never fit. The one person who never asked me to redefine love was my grandfather. His name was Walter. He wasn't loud. He wasn't the kind of man who filled a room with stories. He built houses. Literally. For 42 years, he owned a small construction company that repaired old homes instead of tearing them down. He used to tell me something while handing me tiny pieces of scrap wood. Anyone can admire a finished house, Emily. Pay attention to the beams nobody sees. At 9 years old, I thought he was only talking about buildings. Years later, I understood he was talking about people. Every Saturday morning, I followed him through neighborhoods while he inspected old homes. He would kneel beside cracked foundations longer than he admired expensive kitchens. He always said the strongest structures were the ones repaired before anyone noticed they were breaking. He became my safe place, not because he spoiled me, because he listened. When I spoke, he never interrupted. When I cried, he never rushed me. When I succeeded, he never acted surprised. My mother rarely came along. She always had another appointment, another lunch, another meeting. She liked appearances, perfect photos, perfect holidays, perfect family dinners where nobody discussed anything uncomfortable. If something looked good from the street, she considered the problem solved. Grandpa disagreed. He believed hidden cracks eventually reached the front porch. For years, those 2 philosophies somehow existed in the same family. Until they couldn't. After my father died unexpectedly when I was 14, something changed inside my mother. Grief can reshape people, sometimes into someone softer, sometimes into someone harder. My mother became organized, coldly organized. Every conversation turned into a schedule. Every holiday became a checklist. Every relationship became measured by usefulness. My older brother, Ryan, adapted quickly. He knew exactly what earned approval. Agree first. Question later. Smile for pictures. He wasn't cruel. Not at first. He simply learned the rules faster than I did. I asked questions. He nodded. I remembered birthdays. He remembered opportunities. Slowly, our roles became permanent. Ryan became the successful son. I became the dependable daughter. Dependable sounds like a compliment until you realize dependable people are expected to carry weight without recognition. If dinner needed cooking, I did it. If Grandpa needed groceries after his knee surgery, I delivered them. If family paperwork had to be organized, somehow it always landed on my desk. Nobody asked. They assumed. And assumptions become traditions if nobody challenges them. Years passed that way. Quietly. Gradually. So gradually that I didn't even notice pieces of myself disappearing. The first real sign came after Grandpa turned 80. He invited only 6 people to dinner. Our family. No neighbors. No business partners. Just us. Halfway through dessert, he looked around the table and smiled. I've been thinking about retirement. My mother immediately started talking about vacation homes. Ryan asked whether the company would be sold. I stayed quiet. Grandpa looked at me instead. Emily, he said, you're the only one who asked me last week whether I was ready. The room became awkward. Nobody likes quiet truths served with apple pie. My mother laughed. Oh, Dad, don't make everything sentimental. He smiled politely, but I noticed something. He didn't answer her. That tiny silence stayed with me longer than the conversation itself. Because sometimes silence isn't empty. Sometimes it's a decision still waiting for its date. Over the next 3 years, Grandpa slowed down. His hands shook more than they used to. He walked carefully, but his mind remained sharp. Every few weeks, he invited me over to organize old business files. Thousands of documents, contracts, property surveys, insurance records dating back decades. He insisted everything should be digitized. Ryan never came. Mom said she was too busy. I didn't mind. Those afternoons became my favorite part of the week. We talked about houses, history, people. He often repeated the same lesson. A building collapses years before anyone hears the sound. I eventually realized families work the same way. The collapse begins quietly. One ignored conversation. One broken promise. One unfair assumption. Until suddenly everyone pretends they don't know why the walls are cracking. About 8 months before everything happened, Grandpa handed me a sealed envelope. Don't open this unless I tell you. I laughed. That sounds serious. It is. But I'm healthy. You are. He smiled. I'm preparing for people who mistake planning for favoritism. I slipped the envelope into my home safe without opening it. Then life continued. Or at least it looked like it did. Meanwhile, my mother's behavior became stranger. She started organizing family group chats for everything. Birthdays, dinner plans, holiday decorations, medical appointments. Every conversation had to happen where everyone could see it. Public agreement mattered more than private understanding. If someone disagreed, she corrected them in front of everyone. Not yelling. Never yelling. Just carefully, politely. Enough to make disagreement feel embarrassing. Ryan copied her style perfectly. I stayed mostly quiet. It was easier, or so I believed. Then came the dinner that changed everything. It was supposed to celebrate my mother's 61st birthday. 23 people attended. The dining table stretched almost the entire length of the room. Candles. Fresh flowers. Perfect place settings. Everything looked exactly the way she wanted. Appearances first. Always. Halfway through dinner, my cousin mentioned Grandpa hadn't attended. My mother sighed dramatically. He gets stubborn. Ryan nodded. We've all tried. I knew neither statement was true. Grandpa had politely declined because he was tired. Nothing more. I almost corrected them. Instead, I counted. 7 people changed the subject. 3 nodded without knowing the facts. One aunt looked down at her plate. Nobody wanted discomfort. The evening continued. Until dessert. Someone asked when the annual family vacation would be planned. My mother smiled. Probably without unnecessary complications this year. She looked directly at me. Not long. Just long enough. The table noticed. Nobody spoke. Again. The conversation moved on as though nothing had happened. That was how our family handled conflict. Ignore it until someone quietly disappeared. Driving home, I remembered Grandpa's favorite sentence. Foundations fail long before roofs fall. I didn't know how literal those words would become, because less than 2 weeks later, a single notification appeared on my phone. You have been removed from the Harper family group. Seconds later, another message arrived. From my mother. Only 4 words. Don't come back. I stared at the screen. No explanation. No argument beforehand. Nothing. Just 4 words that somehow carried years of quiet rejection inside them. I placed the phone face down on the kitchen counter. For nearly 10 minutes, I simply stood there, listening to the refrigerator hum. It was oddly peaceful, as though my house had already accepted something my heart was still trying to understand. Then, at 8:47 p.m., my doorbell rang. It was Grandpa. He was holding the same worn leather folder he had carried for years. He looked at my face once, then at the phone on the counter. He didn't ask what happened. Instead, he quietly said, "Emily, I think it's finally time for you to open the envelope." Grandpa placed the worn leather folder on my kitchen table as carefully as if it contained glass instead of paper. He took off his jacket, folded it over the back of the chair, and waited until I sat down across from him. Neither of us spoke for almost a minute. That was something I had always appreciated about him. He never rushed difficult moments. Finally, he nodded toward the small safe in the corner of my office. The envelope is still there. It is. Good. I walked over, entered the 6-digit code, and pulled out the cream-colored envelope he had handed me 8 months earlier. The seal was untouched. My hands felt strangely steady. I placed it on the table. Grandpa slid a small letter opener toward me. Go ahead. Inside were 3 documents. The first was a handwritten letter. The second was a notarized copy of an agreement dated March 14, 2018. The third was a business authorization signed by Grandpa and 2 attorneys whose names I recognized from the construction company. I looked at him, confused. I don't understand. You will. I unfolded the handwritten letter first. His handwriting was slow, but perfectly clear. Emily, if you're reading this, something has finally happened that confirmed what I have been seeing for years. This isn't about one argument. It's about a pattern. People reveal themselves through repetition, not through isolated mistakes. My eyes moved slowly across the page. He explained that after my father died, he had quietly begun reorganizing parts of his business. Not because he expected conflict, because he wanted to prevent it. Construction had taught him one important lesson. Every solid structure needs backup support in case one beam fails. Families were no different. I reached the second document. It wasn't a will. It wasn't a trust. It was something far more specific. Back in 2018, Grandpa had created what his attorney called a continuity management agreement for Harper Restoration Company. According to the document, if he became medically unable to manage daily operations, or if family conflict threatened the company's stability, the authority to approve or suspend major company contracts would temporarily transfer to a designated operations trustee. The designated trustee wasn't Ryan. It wasn't my mother. It wasn't one of Grandpa's longtime business partners. It was me. I stared at the signature page. There was my name. initialed on every page. Signed 6 years earlier after Grandpa insisted I review company archives with him. I barely remembered signing routine administrative acknowledgments during those afternoons. Apparently, one of them had far greater importance than I realized. I thought those papers were just authorization forms. I whispered. They were. He smiled gently. And you actually read them before signing. I looked back down. Ryan never had. Mom never would have. They assumed paperwork belonged to lawyers. Grandpa believed paperwork protected people. The authority isn't permanent, he explained. It only activates under specific conditions. What conditions? He pointed toward paragraph 12. I read every word. The authority became active if 2 licensed physicians certified Grandpa was temporarily unable to oversee operations. That had happened 10 days earlier after his scheduled heart procedure. He was recovering well. But legally, the clause had already taken effect, which meant that for the next 90 days, no major financial agreement involving Harper Restoration Company could proceed without my approval. 90 days. Exactly. Not forever. Just long enough to protect the company during uncertainty. I looked up. Does Mom know? No. Ryan? No. Your attorneys? They know. And they've remained quiet because the agreement required confidentiality unless activation occurred. I leaned back. Suddenly, dozens of conversations over the past year made sense. Grandpa hadn't been organizing files because he was bored. He had been preparing. Not against anyone. For the company itself. Businesses survive because procedures exist before emergencies happen. Families often fail because they assume love will replace planning. We sat quietly while rain tapped against the kitchen window. Finally, I asked the question sitting in the middle of the room. Why me? Grandpa answered without hesitation. Because you ask whether decisions are fair before asking whether they're profitable. I laughed softly. I've never even managed a company. No. You've managed responsibility. That's harder. His words stayed with me. Not because they sounded flattering. Because they sounded heavy. Responsibility rarely feels exciting. Most days it feels invisible. The following morning I drove to Harper Restoration's downtown office for the first time in nearly 6 months. The receptionist smiled. Emily, Mr. Harper said you might stop by. Nothing unusual. No celebration. No announcement. Just another workday. The attorneys met me in a conference room overlooking the warehouse. One of them, Mr. Collins, placed a binder in front of me. Inside were current contracts, insurance renewals, equipment leases, pending property purchases, everything organized with colored tabs. He explained my role carefully. You don't run the company. You simply approve or delay major commitments until Walter resumes full authority. I appreciated the distinction. Power without limits becomes dangerous. Power with rules becomes responsibility. For 2 weeks, nothing unusual happened. I reviewed documents, asked questions, approved routine projects, delayed one equipment purchase because 2 bids differed by almost $40,000. The accounting department thanked me later. A calculation error had been discovered. Life settled into a rhythm. Then my phone buzzed during lunch. A family group notification appeared. Not the old one. A new one. Apparently everyone except me had been added. My cousin accidentally forwarded a screenshot. The title read, Family First. Below it, my mother had written, Some people remove themselves from family through their own choices. Dozens of thumbs-up reactions followed. No names. No direct accusations. Just enough ambiguity to invite assumptions. I closed the screenshot. People who need audiences often mistake silence for surrender. I had no interest in performing. 3 days later, Ryan called. His voice sounded unusually cheerful. Hey, He hadn't called me, in years. How are you? I'm fine. I've been meaning to reach out. I figured. He laughed awkwardly. You know Mom. I do. She didn't really mean what she said. I see. Another pause. Then he finally reached the reason for the call. We're thinking about expanding the company. I said nothing. We found an amazing commercial property. Still nothing. The paperwork should be finished next week. Interesting, because according to the binder sitting on my office desk, no purchase had been approved. Not yet. Ryan kept talking. It'll be good for everyone. I'm sure. You'll come around eventually. I have work to finish. The call ended politely, but one sentence echoed in my mind. The paperwork should be finished next week. Except legally. It couldn't be. Not without one signature. Mine. I didn't call anyone. I didn't confront Ryan. Instead, I reviewed the pending acquisition file. Purchase price: $3,480,000. Required approval: Operations Trustee. Status: pending. Buyer financing deadline: 5 business days. Interesting. Very interesting. The attorneys noticed my expression. Mr. Collins asked, "Problem?" "I think someone believes this transaction is already complete." He frowned. "It isn't." "I know." That afternoon, I requested additional engineering inspections on the property. Nothing dramatic. Nothing unreasonable. Just standard due diligence. The inspection uncovered foundation damage estimated at nearly $620,000 in future repairs. The seller had disclosed cosmetic issues, not structural concerns. Without the additional inspection, Harper Restoration would likely have inherited the expense. Mr. Collins closed the report. Walter was right. About what? You always inspect the beams. I smiled despite myself. Grandpa would have appreciated that. Word of the delayed purchase spread faster than I expected. Not publicly. Inside the family. Suddenly, relatives who hadn't called in months began checking on me. An aunt invited me to lunch. A cousin wanted coffee. Another relative texted, "Hope you're doing okay." People rarely become curious without a reason. The reason arrived 2 nights later. Mom called. I watched the screen for 3 rings before answering. "Hello." Her voice was perfectly calm, almost warm. "Emily." "Mom, I think we've both let things go too far." "We have? I'd like you to come to dinner Sunday. The whole family will be there." I glanced at my calendar. Sunday. Interesting choice. Because Monday morning was the financing deadline for the commercial property. She continued before I answered. "It'll be good for everyone to clear the air. I'll think about it." "Please do." After hanging up, I opened the company portal again. One new notification waited. Purchase authorization requested. Deadline: 11:59 p.m. Sunday. I looked at the clock. 8:16 p.m. 3 hours and 43 minutes. For the first time, I realized Sunday's family dinner wasn't really about reconciliation. It was about timing. And I quietly wondered how many people around that table already believed my signature was guaranteed. Sunday arrived with clear skies and the kind of quiet morning that usually makes people believe difficult conversations can somehow become easy. They rarely do. I drove to my mother's house 10 minutes early. The driveway already held 7 cars. Through the dining room window, I could see everyone taking their seats. My mother had always believed seating arrangements told people where they belonged. That afternoon, mine was at the far end of the table. 22 people attended. I counted them before I sat down. Bold habit. Grandpa arrived last, leaning on his cane but smiling as though he already knew how the evening would end. Dinner began with harmless conversation. Vacations. Weather. A neighbor's new puppy. No one mentioned the text message. No one mentioned the family group. No one mentioned why I had supposedly been invited back. Then my mother lifted her glass. "I think it's wonderful that we're together again as a family." Several people nodded. Ryan smiled. I stayed silent. During the next 20 minutes, I counted something else. My name was mentioned 11 times. Every single time, it came with a suggestion. Emily understands. Emily always helps. Emily will support the family. Not once did anyone ask what I thought. They simply assumed. Finally, Ryan pushed a leather folder across the table. There are just a few business papers. Routine stuff. I didn't touch it. What kind of papers? Nothing complicated. I looked at the cover page. It was the authorization packet for the commercial property purchase. Exactly the documents I had seen in the company portal. Only now they were sitting beside a plate of roast chicken as though they were dinner conversation. My mother smiled. You can sign after dessert. Her confidence almost impressed me. I folded my hands. I won't be signing tonight. The room became very quiet. Ryan laughed once. You haven't even read them. I already have. His smile disappeared. Mom leaned forward. Emily, this isn't the time. I agree. Then don't create unnecessary problems. I didn't. You've always been difficult. I noticed 3 relatives immediately looked down at their plates. No one reached for another bite of food. Ryan spoke next. This purchase benefits everyone. It benefits someone. I answered calmly. The engineering report says the foundation repairs alone could exceed $620,000. His face lost its color. Mom frowned. What engineering report? The one completed 3 days ago. Neither of them answered. That told me everything. They hadn't known the inspection had taken place. Ryan's voice became sharper. You're holding up a $3.48 million deal because of one report? I'm preventing the company from buying a problem. His chair scraped backward. This is exactly why Mom gets frustrated with you. There it was. Anger. The first tactic. Fast. Predictable. Loud enough to fill the room. I didn't raise my voice to match his. Construction had taught Grandpa something valuable. If one wall begins shaking, the strongest beam doesn't shake with it. It holds. Mom tried next. Her voice softened. Emily. Sweetheart. We're family. Manipulation. The second tactic. She hadn't called me sweetheart in years. I know we're family. Then trust us. I trust verified inspections. A few people exchanged uncomfortable glances. Ryan threw his napkin onto the table. You think you're smarter than everyone. No. I think contracts should be read. Silence. Heavy silence. Mom reached for my hand. I quietly moved mine back. Then came the third tactic. Her eyes filled with tears. I don't understand why you're trying to embarrass me. I looked at her carefully. I'm not embarrassing you. I'm protecting Grandpa's company. You've chosen business over your own mother. No, you asked me not to come back. The sentence landed harder than I expected. No one spoke. Several relatives looked at my mother. She blinked twice. I never meant. You removed me from the family group. Silence. You sent 4 words. Her lips parted. I repeated them calmly. Don't come back. No one at the table denied it. Because no one could. At that moment, Grandpa slowly stood. The room immediately became still. He rested both hands on the back of his chair. I've listened long enough. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. I built this company over 42 years. He looked toward Ryan. Do you know what Emily asked during every property review? Ryan didn't answer. She asked where the weak points were. Then he looked at my mother. Do you know what you asked? She looked away. You asked whether the kitchen photographs looked modern. A few people smiled awkwardly. Not because it was funny. Because it was true. Grandpa reached into his folder and placed one document on the table. The operations continuity agreement. Several relatives leaned forward. Ryan picked it up. His eyes moved quickly across the first page. Then more slowly. Finally, he reached the signature page. His expression changed completely. This can't be right. It is. You gave Emily authority. I gave responsibility to the person who earned my trust. Mom whispered, You never told us. I didn't need permission. The room stayed silent. Grandpa continued. For 10 days, Emily has protected this company. He pointed toward the inspection report. Those repairs would have cost us more than $600,000. He looked around the table. She didn't damage this family. She prevented this business from making an expensive mistake. No one argued. There wasn't much left to argue about. Ryan slowly sat back down. For the first time all evening, he looked less angry than exhausted. I didn't know. I believe you, I said. And that's exactly why paperwork matters. My mother quietly wiped away a tear. I thought you were trying to punish us. I shook my head. If I wanted revenge, I would have stayed silent and let the purchase happen. Instead, I opened my phone. The authorization request was still waiting. Time, 1:12 a.m. would arrive in just a few hours. I logged into the secure portal. Everyone watched without speaking. I selected one option. Cancel pending authorization. Reason: structural defects requiring further review. I pressed confirm. A notification appeared. Request accepted. Processing started. That was the same notification I had seen at the beginning of this story. No celebration followed. No applause. Only quiet. Because real victories rarely sound dramatic. 3 months later, Harper Restoration purchased a different property after independent inspections confirmed it was structurally sound. The final purchase price was $2.91 million, saving the company hundreds of thousands of dollars in future repairs. Grandpa fully returned to work 87 days after his surgery. He retired the following spring on his own terms. Ryan eventually apologized. Not with speeches, with consistency. Sometimes that matters more. My mother never apologized using the exact words I expected. Instead, one afternoon she handed me a small cardboard box she had kept in the attic for years. Inside was the tiny wooden birdhouse Grandpa and I had built when I was 9. The paint had faded. One corner was cracked, but the foundation was still solid. I repaired that corner the same weekend. Some things deserve restoration. Others simply need distance. I've learned the difference. Because family isn't measured by who keeps your name in a group chat. It's measured by who protects your place when you're no longer in the room. This is not revenge. This is arithmetic. Trust, like a foundation, is built quietly and it collapses the same way. If this story reminded you to know your worth, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe, drop a comment, and I will see you in the next one.